Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between podcast. I'm Renae Lipsmeyer. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on these videos. Thanks again for watching. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. If you are listening to this on your favorite podcast app, just know that you can also watch this video on our YouTube channel, which is the Space Between podcast on YouTube. A lot of our podcasts are there, not all of them. So be sure to also check out our list of podcasts. We have almost 60 episodes. And so each one is not about the Dave Matthews Band. What we talk about are the fans of the Dave Matthews Band, because there's a whole deep tunnel of like information that's just behind the fans of the band. And so that's what interests me. And so each week I have a new fan that I have met in some way because of the Dave Matthews Band. And so today we have Michelle from Oregon. And so Michelle, I'm going to hand this over to you. Just tell us who you are, where you live, and then kind of tell us like your voyage into the Dave Matthews Band. Like, how did you first hear about them, and how did that lead to where you are now?
Sure. So I live in Portland, Oregon, or close to Portland, Oregon. And I am, well, what am I exactly? I own a small business, but my why is the earth and animals. And let's see, my first Dave Matthews show was Gorge 2006. And my ex-husband always teases me about this because when I was younger in the 90s, I didn't like Dave.
Honestly, I think that's a super common story, right? Like, it is actually.
I didn't. I was just like, no, not my thing. But you know what? It's because I wasn't listening to any deep tracks, right? I was listening to more radio, and I was just like, yeah, not really my thing. And then I think when like Pandora and stuff started coming out and I started like listening to music that I like, Dave kept coming up, but it was more like deep tracks. It was more, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was just like, I just became a fan pretty instantly. And then went to the Gorge. And everyone that's been to the Gorge knows, like, it's hard to walk out of there and not just be obsessed.
Right. So, the band does sound different at the Gorge. Like, they do. Yes. I mean, everything is different, but we'll talk about that later. But yes, the Gorge, what a place to like see them live for the first time, right? I mean, that kind of sets you up for like huge expectations, right? Like, what was the next concert gonna be like?
It did. Well, then, so because I was just baby fan, right? So then everyone's like, you got to go to SPAC, you got to go to SPAC. So I went to SPAC the next year, and I was kind of like, this is not the Gorge, you know? And I was like, because I didn't really understand. It's more about the set list, you know? And I was like, I don't get it, you know? But then slowly, you know, and it was so funny because when I left the Gorge that year, I was the whole way home looking for the next shows I could get to. I mean, it was like instantly. I was like, where can I travel? And I had never traveled to see a band ever in my life. I mean, I've always really enjoyed music and I love music, obviously, but I had never like, I wasn't going to fly to another state, another country, or, you know, to see a band, but it was instant. It was instant with DMB.
It's wild, isn't it wild? I mean, my story is similar as well. Like, I love music. I never in a million years thought that I would be doing what I am currently doing. But also, like, for me, it couldn't have happened at a better time in my life, right? Because I could have had this time in my 20s, but I would not have received it like I am receiving it in my 40s, right? Like, he's telling me what I need to hear right now. And so that's why I think it kind of fell into this time. I think it was meant to be, like, for both of us. Like, we needed that then, and the universe was like, here you go. Like, that's how I feel about it.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe that's crazy. I don't know. Maybe that's
no,
crazy.
I feel exactly the same way. I really needed that Dave medicine, and he is that medicine. Yes. And without, honestly, I'm sure so many of us feel this way. Without him in my life, it would just not be a real full circular life. Like he just he completes me.
Right. Well, I think yes, I give all of the credit to the Dave Matthews Bands, but like also I like to preach that like music, like the chemistry in your brain is different when you're listening to music, right? Like it's beyond like a fanhood. It's beyond what everybody wants to say. People are crazy for listening to music. No, people that listen to music are typically happier people that have less depression. So honestly, I like to preach that people that listen to music are really helping themselves, right? So I preach this so much. And the Dave Matthews Band is what did it for me at this time in my life because, you know, again, like you, I knew about them my whole life, right? Like because they've been around since I was like 10, right? So like basically my whole life. So of course I wasn't into them in the beginning. It really kind of had to hit me at a certain time. But as I've talked to fans, I kind of think that's a common story. Like they kind of were older before the lyrics made sense, right? Because the music's always been great, but the lyrics is what will get your heart, right? Like that's what pulls you in, and you're like, oh my God, I can apply this to so much of my life, or that answers so many questions. And I'm a big music fan, and I've never received that from music before. Not in this way. Not in this way. I mean,
Me
does
either.
all that sound like frou-frou, or does that make sense at all?
Me, it's absolutely, it's magic, it's medicine, and sometimes lyrics will hit you on a day and a time that you just really, really need that. It's just crazy. I actually remember, God, well now I can't think of what song it was, but I was in like a Walgreens, and my dog had just passed away, and I was so sad, and I was so kind of miserable, and I was walking through Walgreens, and I forget what Dave's song it was, but Dave came on, and then as soon as he came on, immediately I was like, okay, you know, that's a message. There's Dave. He's here for me. And then I forget what song it was, and I really wish I could think of it right now, but the lyrics were so perfect. It was just like, okay, I can do this. I got this. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to carry on. Thanks, Dave. So yeah, it's magic. It's medicine. It's what we need to hear usually at that day, at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have come at a better time in my life, and it sounds like the same for you. And so even people that have been fans like from day one, like, you know, those they seem to just, and maybe this is a whole facade, but they seem to be happier people, right? Like that they've just kind of made that part of their life, and kind of just lived in that way, and what a happy life that seemed to be. And maybe again I'm wrong, but so tell me, like, you talk about your passions other than Dave Matthews Band. So I know a lot of people know about your passions because your passion is so strong. And I mean, you preach the message because it's near and dear to your heart. So for people that know nothing about what you stand for and what you fight for on a daily basis, give our listeners kind of an idea of what it is that you do and how you got into that.
Yeah, so maybe some people would know our big orca bus. It's been out at the gorge for probably almost 10 years. So both my husband and I are huge activists for the Southern Resident killer whale population. They are an ecotype of orcas. And how I can explain that would be, it's almost like an ethnicity. So it would be like the Caucasian race. So they are a very specific ecotype of orcas, meaning they have their own language, they have their own culture, they eat only a certain type of food. They're very specific. Their bodies are specific as well, and they're the most studied whales on the planet Earth. They've been studied for 46 years by the Center of Whale Research, where they've actually they identified them through their dorsal fins, through their saddle patches, through their markings. So they follow them and have created linear lines of, you know, mother, son, sister, brother. So there's 3 pods. They're all very well known. They're named through the Whale Museum up on San Juan Island, which Dave visits San Juan Island sometimes. And they swim in the Puget Sound, so they come down through Seattle. They'll even sometimes go down as far as Monterey, but they spend the majority of their time in the San Juan Islands, and they're very beloved. They were the first whales that were taken for captivity in the late 60s into the 70s in the United States. So they were the only whales taken in the U.S. waters in the late 60s and 70s. And then we passed the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And so that's how that ended in the United States, that no longer would any cetaceans be removed from the waters of the United States. And at that time, their population was unfortunately a bit decimated. There was a lot of deaths and a lot of them removed and put into aquariums and sea parks. And since that time, the Southern Resident Orcas have been put on the endangered species list. And the reason why they're struggling so much is because we have such a lack of Chinook salmon, which, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I feel that most people really think of salmon when they think of the Pacific Northwest. They think of salmon and indigenous people and orca, and but we really don't have any salmon left. The majority of the salmon that comes out into the Puget Sound and into that area comes down the Columbia River, and we have 14 dams on the river, and we have well, actually, we have 12 on the Columbia, but then they go all the way up. And the largest tributary to the Columbia River is the Snake River. And it's my goal, and many people that love the Southern Resident Orcas, and also really the bears, the eagles, all the things that we have here in the lovely Pacific Northwest, to get these dams breached so we can get salmon runs back on the Columbia River. We're at 2% of our native runs, which is considered functional extinction. So I know I probably sound like a little geeked out on that, but
no, you sound passionate.
Yeah, most of the salmon, in other words, is farmed. So it's not a native salmon. And when farmed salmon are a diluted salmon, they don't have the capacity to go up rivers and return back the way a native natural salmon would. So they actually kind of destroy the native species of salmon. So myself and really honestly, there are millions of people that love the Southern Residents. I hear from people all over the world every day that are pulling from them. I mean, just this week I heard from Dublin, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, England. Like, it's constant. What can we do to help them? We can't imagine seeing them go, because they are so studied, and there's so much footage of them and information about them. And right now in Portland, Oregon, there's a huge traveling museum for them that came out of Canada and BC. So they're very beloved, and they're very important. They're the largest brained animal on the earth, and they have the most convoluted brain, meaning they have the most brain matter than any being. And they actually have 2 additional sections of their brain that humans don't even have. Wow. So they're very telepathic. I know that sounds crazy, but they are. And their emotional connectivity to each other, it far surpasses humans. So when they lose one another, it's very upsetting to them. And Taliqua, they called it the Tour of Grief. It actually made international news. It was on NPR. It was even on CNN when her baby passed away just after birth, because they're having trouble giving birth to healthy babies because they're starving. She carried her deceased baby on her nostrum for 17 days, over 1,000 miles. And her family fed her to keep her alive, because otherwise she would have starved. So they share food, and they kept her alive until she finally let go. So it's hard not to be passionate about them. They're pretty amazing. And it's my goal to get those Snake River dams breached and get salmon back on the Columbia River out into the out into the Salish Sea and the Puget Sound for the orcas.
Wow. That's so just because I'm completely ignorant about this, and I will be the first to admit this, and I don't live near water, and that doesn't mean I shouldn't be aware of what's going on, but it's not right here in front of me. And so I know
Yeah.
that probably on the coast it's very heard about and people love it and they know. So explain to me, because I don't know, when the government or when cities build these dams, are they completely aware of what they are doing when they build dams?
Well, the first dam on the Snake, I believe it went up in 1956, and they did do a lot of environmental impact studies on it, and they were forewarned that this will cause extinction of salmon on the Columbia River. They were well aware that it would be detrimental. Not only that, but it's a huge indigenous issue. My personal friend Jesse Nightwalker and Carrie Nightwalker. Jesse was the inheritant chief of the Palouse tribe. His mother Carrie was actually forcibly removed from their land, their fishing village, so they could flood her their village with the dam. And she remembers seeing the canoes floating that had her ancestral, they had actually the bodies of ancestors in these canoes. And she remembers seeing them starting to bob because they literally had to take them out by police escort because her mother would not leave. She was like, we're not leaving. And they had to remove them because the water was rising because of the dams. So it's a big indigenous issue. It's land that was stolen. The tribes all along the Columbia, they're suffering because salmon is such a cultural thing for them. It's a treaty right for them, and they are no longer having access to salmon as well. So along with, the orca passing and going extinct, so are cultural things for all these indigenous tribes that are being impacted by the lack of salmon. So they're all on board now too, and I'm working with them to get the dams down. So
that's amazing. So what kind of movement have y'all had? Have you been really successful with kind of bringing this to the public, and are the public, are they receptive to what you're saying? Because this is my first time to hear most of this, and I'm like, what can I do, right? Like, I can't imagine that someone could hear all this and be like, wow, I had no idea, right? So bringing awareness to this is so important. So thank you for doing that. But like, how has it gone so far with talking to people that can do something about this? How has that gone?
Well, unfortunately, politically, it's been an uphill battle. Once the Army Corps of Engineers put something in, they don't want to take it out.
True.
It's a lot. It's a lot easier to get them to place it. It seems to remove it and say, okay, it served its purpose, and now it's time to come out. So there's in 2002 they did an environmental impact study trying to find out what would be the best way to bring salmon back to the Pacific Northwest. Option 2, breaching the lower Snake River dams, was the only option they didn't do. 15 to 20 billion later, we still don't have salmon, and the dams are still up. So unfortunately, there's a lot of activism around it. I have sat with signs outside people's private fundraising dinners, and so as their fundraisers are driving in, we're out there like, hey, Patty Murray, we need the dams down. When gosh, I can't even think, because I'm drawing a blank. Governor Inslee of Washington, when he ran for president and he came to Portland, guess who was there to meet him?
You were.
I was with about 100 of my best friends, and you could hear us on the news because they had it on CNN. You could hear us in the background. Breach the dams, the whole time.
So do you find that most politicians are aware of this already?
They are.
They are. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what something is good. That's excellent. Is about 10 years ago, I would say that a lot of them were not. Certainly the senators were. Now, all the senators in Idaho and Oregon and Washington are well aware of the dams. There is a pro dam movement, but it's primarily to keep Lewiston a port city. So they're a port because of the dams. They move wheat back and forth on the barge. Actually, I live on the Columbia River, and we might see a barge go by. And we have developed a plan, and the government has developed a plan where we can simply move the wheat on the rail and let the salmon move in the water. Instead, we're trucking salmon on the roads and moving wheat on the river. So we would like to just see that be changed. And a lot of tribes have done totem. They carve indigenous totems. The Lummi Nation has done that, and they've brought it all the way up to DC and brought all the publicity and everything that comes up, asking them to please breach the dams. The Nimi Poo have also, so there's been a lot of tribes that have been trying to hard hit the government. And I have to say that for the first time about a year ago, I started seeing pro dam commercials on the TV, which I was actually like, yes, because it meant that they're feeling the heat so bad that they're taking airtime out to try and send propaganda about why they should stay. They're not green energy. The reservoirs are awful they give off a lot of methane. It's not a form of green energy. It's very environmentally destructive.
And I invite any of our listeners, whether you're listening to this via podcast app or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you have a pro dam position and you'd be willing to argue these two facts as we can come together as family members, Dave Matthews, because you didn't find this podcast unless you listen to the Dave Matthews Band, because we are like deep down into a twisted hole of the Dave Matthews Band. So if we could just bring like Dave Matthews Band fans together and have debates about things outside of the Dave world, like that's just like humanity. Like let's just talk it out. Like
I'm all about it.
I want to hear your point of view. I want to hear your point of view. And then I think that's what the world needs more of. It's just like listening to people's perspective and like, tell me exactly why you feel that way. Like I love to hear people tell me everything, right? Because then I can figure them out. Otherwise, like I don't have a fucking clue what you are, right? So it's just so helpful when people can come together and like calmly have discussions. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. And I hope that like we can use this podcast to elevate that for you. So if someone wants to know more about what you do, how can they reach out to you, and how can they help if someone says, how can I get involved in this? Walk us through what that would look like if someone wanted to know that.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of campaigns right now where you can get involved and even just send postcards. You can make calls. Biden can do an executive order to breach the dams if he so chooses. The Army Corps of Engineers has the ability to breach the dams without it going through any political process. So you're welcome to reach out to any of those. And damtruth.com and damsense.com are just a wealth of information about what's going on. And they have the environmental impact studies that you can read through and take a look at, so you can, kind of make your own educated decisions on things. I used to run Sea Shepherd. Some people know Sea Shepherd from the Discovery Channel show Whale Wars. So I used to run it for the state of Oregon, but recently our Captain Paul Watson, the founder of Greenpeace, as well as Sea Shepherd, has moved on and started the Captain Paul Watson Foundation. So you can find me there. I run it for the state of Oregon on Facebook or on the Captain Paul Watson Foundation website. And you are free to pick up a phone anytime and just say, hey, Biden, breach those lower First Snake River dams. We need salmon and orca. They matter to the ecosystem, and they're a keystone species. So it matters to all of us because it's one ocean, one world. We're all connected.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you for continuing to preach that, because I don't think there's, when we turn on the news each morning, or at least when I do, I kind of feel like it sets me up for my whole day like a failure, right? Because mostly what I hear is fear and not education, right? Like you're not going to try to explain it to me. You're just going to go, hey, you should hate this. This is dangerous or whatever. So thank you for being a person that's just like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I feel about it. Here's how you can help, right? But like you're not saying it in a hateful way. You're not like the government is fucking all, like,
oh
thank you for just like explaining what's going on.
We need to work together.
Yeah,
we all need to work together and find solutions that can work for everybody, and we can make sure that everybody's getting their needs met as best as possible, and while we're still saving the environment, which is our life support system.
Yes. Awesome. So wrapping this up, we have to talk shop just a little bit, right? Because a couple of things have happened. Well, what was today, right? So I don't know when they dropped that the Europe tour was coming this next spring, but like tickets went on sale through the warehouse, or you got a code to go through Ticketmaster to buy, Europe tickets. So no pressure, but like, what does your future look like? Or have you kind of thought, are you just like, I need a break? Like, what are you thinking? I don't know. What are you thinking?
I'm going to Europe.
Oh my goodness. Yay. That's so exciting.
I kept it pretty tame. I'm going to Warsaw. I'm going to Berlin. I'm going to Vienna, and I'm going to Prague. And then I'm going to spend just some regular days in Italy before I fly back home. I can't go too crazy. I got a dog and a business.
Well, I mean, that doesn't, yeah. I mean, there's so much, but it's good. It's good to like invest in yourself, and like, if you can do it, you can do it. Like, these are the reasons why we work hard, and like, this is the reason, and so we could do this shit. And so,
and doesn't Dave preach that to us? Doesn't he remind us every day that life is short? It's sweet for certain.
Absolutely. and today, every day should be a good day to die. So, don't just be happy now, and really don't let fear take over your life. I mean, not that you should just like blow money and go see Dave Matthews Band. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying.
I would never say that.
Not financial advisors. Like, you will not get me to be like, I have no sense when it comes to that shit, because I'm just like, Dave is going here. Yes, I'm going. Like, without even thinking about like, Renae, that's actually going to cost you $20,000 for that one concert, right? Like, that didn't occur to me.
I know. I have a credit card,
That's how you get in trouble. But anyways, no, I'm so excited about the fall, and there's a lot of good things coming. Of course we have the fall tour coming up. I'm glad that the boys are getting a break, a well-deserved break. And then they open things back up on the East Coast. If nothing, all the schedules that have come out tell us that they're not done. They are not done. They are like in the highest gear that their like engine will go, and like they are ready to just sing and dance and like make people happy around the fucking world. And I'm so happy, because they did not say that this is a farewell tour. This is not anything close to a farewell tour. This is like, watch us do this in our 32nd year and fucking kill it, right?
Yep. And that's what they're doing. I know, it's been crazy to see how many dates they played in a 12-month period. I'm like, nobody does it. And they're having a great time doing it, and we're having a great time watching.
Yeah, no, like, I can't think of anything more fun to watch. I mean, like, in the music world, obviously there's lots of beautiful things outside of Dave Matthews Band, but like, in the music world, this is such a beautiful experience, because it's not just about the music that feeds your soul, right? It's everything visually, it's everything in your ears, but then it's also everything in your heart, and the people that we continue to meet every time we go to hear a band, right? It's more than just a band. It's a whole way of life. It's a whole way of seeing the world. And so if you're listening to this, then you're probably a big fan of the Dave Matthews Band, or you just, are one of our friends. And thank you for like, what a great first episode to listen to. Like, we learned something. And so this was a great episode. So thank you, Michelle, so much for working this out. Like, again, I'm not a tech savvy person, so we had a little trouble making this work, but we did it. You know, I told her in the beginning, I was like, I'm not a podcaster. Like, I am a podcaster, but like, I'm a nurse. So like, I work as a nurse during the day, and then I come home and pretend that I know how to do a podcast. But thank you for being on my episode. And guys, you can find out more on her social medias as well. So be sure to check her out. Guys, again, if you're listening to this on a podcast app, just know that you can watch all of this. And we're going to have some pictures of Michelle at the Gorge this year and of her bus. So there are some reasons to watch it on YouTube, because you're going to get to see a lot more things than just hear it. So guys, be sure to check that out. And also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook under the group. It's the Space Between Podcast group. On Instagram, it's the Space Between _ POD. It's like all these things you have to remember, and I'm like, hashtag what, pound, I don't know what all this
forward
is.
slash
Like,
backslash.
they're all into social media, like, girl, you about to learn. I'm like, oh god. Oh god, I am just figuring this all out. So yeah, follow me on everything. We've got some fun things coming. So Michelle, again, thank you. And guys, peace, love, and Dave Matthews. Thanks you, Michelle.